I am certain, at the very moment that I utter these words, that you are astonished to hear them, amazed to be the subject of a carefully crafted political speech. Why might that be? You are astounded for the most simple reason that, as we all know so painfully well, the poor do not exist in American politics. It is not simply because the two political parties, the whores and the pimps, must spend all their time bowing their heads low before the cruel gods, the billionaires, the bankers and their lackeys, in order to enjoy the pleasures of the flesh. No, there is a deeper denial going on right now in America as the wheels come off the cart. A vast blanket of amnesia has been draped over our country, and whereas organizing labor or leading workers in the struggle for justice was a significant part of politics in a previous age, we have only cardboard progressives today, men and women who talk about the needs of the middle class, by which they mean those who are visible from the celestial heights of the billionaires in their spacecraft above. We hold, however, that if the poor cannot be mentioned, if they are assumed to be insignificant as cockroaches and maggots to the billionaires who pull the strings, then verily we pronounce that if the poor do not exist, then democracy does not exist either. For that matter, if the poor who struggle to earn a few dollars at part-time jobs or to try and keep warm in their makeshift houses rigged up from plastic and cardboard, together with their undernourished children, if they do not mean anything to the overfed politicians, to the corporate lobbyists, or to the revolving door bureaucrats and plastic journalists, then governance does not exist in the United States of America, and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence are worthless scraps of paper, better used to mop up the vomit of a starving man sitting in a private prison in solitary confinement, better used as a diaper for the prematurely born baby of a girl working at McDonald's who suffers endless diarrhea, better to be used to fill the cracks in the wall where the piercing cold wind gets through to an aged man scraping dog food into a bowl for his dinner. We have had enough of that middle class fairy tale that suggests that there is something shameful about poverty, that being poor means one is a failure. But it is wealth, not poverty, that is shameful in this age. We have had enough of that blame the victim routine. You poor are poor because the multinational corporations want you to be poor. They want you poor so that you will be willing to do anything to get a meal, so that you can never get the education necessary to oppose their tyrannical rule. They do not think of you as people. You are a labor market, and the bankers demand flexibility at any cost. They want you poor so that those who have real jobs will always be terrified that the poor will take their jobs away. The billionaires want the so-called middle class to be afraid of you, not to be afraid of the billionaires who are marketed 24/7 as the friends of the middle class, the defenders of Twitter and other psychological operations meant to dumb down citizens. Yes, we have had enough of this. Somewhere I heard, "Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." What does that mean? Could it mean that our salvation lies not with Bill Gates and Elon Musk and the other gaudy members of that parasite class, but that the promise for our future is there with you, the poor, the downtrodden, and the despised. Yes, you know exactly how things work, and you are not trying to deceive yourself into believing that somehow things are just fine when they are not. You have no need to deceive yourselves because you have seen things exactly as they are. You know how things work in America. You know that there is nothing more expensive than having no money. Whether you are forced to ride on overpriced public transportation, forced to pay a fortune for hospitals because you cannot afford health care, or forced to eat every day takeout processed foods because your job will not give you the time you need to feed yourself, you know that you are forced to pay all your money to survive, and that you go into debt if you can go into debt. Many of you will go slowly into the cold, into hunger, and into despair. Let me say a word about race and immigration, because they are the two topics the billionaires love to use to divide Americans, to get the little man to fight the little man, while the man makes out like a bandit, leaving us confused and docile, ready to accept his murderous demands. No one knows this scam better than the poor. Racism has existed in the United States for a long time. It is a product of ignorance, of fear, and of the projection of deep insecurities onto others. Racism was used by the man to justify holding black people as slaves so that workers would be forced to work for less and that industrialists and merchants could become rich. Contempt for the native peoples was taught to whites in America so that no one would question the seizure of their lands. Now we know that the rich plan to seize all the land of all men and women. They just started with the native people. We must not forget the racist tales told to our people that resulted in such cruelty, that caused such pain. But we must certainly cannot allow the billionaires to use the race card to cover over, to obscure the real battle in our country, the battle of class, the battle of all of us against a handful of the super rich. The poor do not exist, but race is a hot topic every day on TV. Radical concentration of wealth never happened, but attacks on minorities are broadcast on the radio without end. Some of those attacks are real. The sad efforts of certain individuals to blame the crimes they have suffered at the hands of the billionaires on blacks, on Asians, or on other immigrants. Many of those attacks these days are false flag operations set up by corrupt parts of the police and private intelligence firms so as to give those watching TV the impression that some sort of race war is going on. Maybe someday we will learn part of that real story. Black versus white, fear of the Asian, the Hispanic, would never have become such enormous problems if we did not have a commercial media telling us for the last 150 years that they are problems. Some of you poor are immigrants, perhaps forced to come here when multinational corporations seized your land in Haiti or Chile, when banks destroyed your jobs in Argentina or Mexico. You know that blaming immigrants for their sins is the oldest. You know that blaming immigrants for the sins of the rich is the oldest trick in the book. We must defeat our common enemy here and back there so that we can all go home again. Our money economy does not offer anything to support the poor. Occasionally, the government offers scams and tricks to lure you into fatal public-private partnerships created to exploit you, to make you even more desperate. Most of the smiling politicians would rather have you locked up in prisons where you can make tremendous profits for their pals in the prison industrial complex. Why they would rather you generate for them $100,000 a year as a prisoner than give you $1 to feed your children. In fact, there is nothing they would like better than to force you to commit a crime so that they can lock you up, so that they can shower money on their for-profit police forces. If we want to save this country, we must start with you, the poor, the downtrodden. If you have the opportunity to feed yourselves, to educate yourselves, and to be independent of this parasite economy rigged up by the billionaires, then you will transform our nation with your own hands and create a democratic and equal society. Democracy can never, will never trickle down. It can only be built from the bottom up. We know that poverty is what awaits most of those in the middle class in the years ahead. The sooner that they figure out that their interests are the same as yours, and that the billionaires are not entrepreneurs and innovators, but they're sworn class enemies, the sooner that they will smarten up and join you in your struggle for freedom and for liberty. Perhaps you noticed that the Congress passed a resolution by an overwhelming margin on February 2nd entitled Denouncing the Horrors of Socialism. The resolution states that Congress denounces socialism in all its forms and opposes the implementation of socialist policies in the United States of America. You, as poor people, have never enjoyed the socialism for billionaires by which the Federal Reserve and Congress sprinkle trillions of dollars on the rich. So you are no doubt scratching your heads about what is so frightening about the word socialism. Socialism has many meanings, and there have been flaws in various socialist projects over the years. But the United States has embraced numerous socialist policies over the last century. In fact, whether it is public education, Social Security, Medicare, or workers' rights to vacations and overtime, the socialist policies adopted by the United States are the most popular policies carried out by government today. No, socialism is being painted as a devil because the billionaires behind the congressmen never want you to think that the federal government might be empowered to seize the wealth of Pfizer and Moderna and of its owners so as to compensate you for those vaccines. No, they don't want you to think the government could be reinvented so as to protect the poor, to stand up for workers. No, you never heard about that idea. Forget that I even mentioned it. I stand with you, the poor, and I pledge that you will be at the center of our new economy. I do not ask for handouts for you. No, you do not need handouts. Handouts are what our government gives to the billionaires and multinational corporations, neither of which are American in any sense of the word. All you need is to be treated like humans, respected as people with souls and feelings, with families and beliefs. All you need is to be given what those of privilege, those who refer to themselves deviously as the middle class, what they get for free.